All right. So, mixing down. So obviously there are two approaches. One that you're mixing as you go along in your production project, but if you ever take upon a job to actually mix for someone else, your friend, client, or even for yourself, because some people actually don't like mixing in the production project just because there is still so much access to the sound design tools and stuff like that. So it's like easy to, sitting down to mix and then you get just bogged down on little details like, oh, that modulation maybe could have been a little bit better. So, then you kind of divert yourself away. And when you finish the track, those little tweaks at that point, they really don't matter. It's just that kind of the overthinking stage. So, what we're going to learn today can also help if you mix your own track to commit to it a little better. So, what I've just explained would be is when you're using stems to mix. So if you mixed for someone else, you don't know what DAW the artist uses, could be Cubase, Logic, FL Studio, whatever, and you don't care. Like just really don't care. Because what you care about is that they send over the stems of the song, so you can put that into your DAW and then mix it. So that's what would happen, and that is what I have in here in this project, a bunch of stems. And there's a couple of things needs to be done. If we look at the track names, the order, the colors, the whatnot, this session is essentially not prepared for mixing yet. So what do you think we need to do first before we, obviously pull in the stems? And then what do we do? How do we get started?
Organize it all.
Exactly. The most important thing. Organizing the session. So you're gonna color code tracks, clips, rename tracks, and reorder the tracks that makes sense to you. So there's no right and wrong with that. Some people have the vocals at the top. Some people have the drums at the top. I have the drums at the top. Some people have colors assigned each time they're mixing. For me, my drums are always red, my vocals always pink, my backing vocals always purple, my bass always green. Like I know this from the top of my head. So once I organized everything, and I need to do something to a group of tracks or a track, I don't really need to go and look for the track and read the track name and whatnot. I just need to look at the color and I find it way easier. So navigation is super important because it will speed up whatever you do. So yeah, that should be the first stage that you listen to the stuff and then you take like 20 minutes and organize it. So let's say everything is organized. Then what do we start with? What do we adjust first?
Like tidying up the audio if it needs it, perhaps.
Maybe not yet,
Okay.
because we might can't really hear yet which track needs to be tidied up. Because first we need to set the volume for each of them. Because when you have stems, it's just a bunch of audio in all kind of levels. In fact, it might be normalized, so not everything is just the same loudness. So you might not even hear that there is a little synth in it because it's just haven't been adjusted to be heard. So volume balance, very important. What's next? No?
Then tidying it up.
Not yet?
No.
Okay, penning. Yeah, so once you actually were able to hear everything properly, each of the elements, then you can now be able to make the executive decisions of like, oh, those backing vocals should go to the sides. That hi-hat can, or shaker can be panned a little bit to the right, the other one to the left, you know? So we start working with the stereo fields, because if you leave everything in the middle, you're gonna end up with a mono and very like one-dimensional song. If you think about it, when you're listening to music, you can hear like nice things always, you know, atmospheres in the back, and you know, even stuff moving between left and right, so you get like a nice spatial mix. So
So,
panning is also important.
so Anna, when you get given the stems, then do you have to duplicate the stems to then pan it left and then pan it right? Like
No,
it, no, okay.
no, there is a way how you can do it. I will show.
Oh, okay. Cool.
You could
Sorry.
you can do it that way as well, but essentially you're not making the sound stereo in that sense, because true
Yeah.
stereo sound is of the same instrument is if there is a little bit of timing difference between it. Do you know what I mean? If you record an acoustic guitar with two microphones, it's picking up the same melody, but from a very little different angle. So that will be truly stereo, because the left and the right side are not exactly the same. Can also, if you only have a mono guitar and you want it stereo, there is ways of, you know, applying a little delay, nudging the clip a bit behind, so you can start kind of tricking the brain into that it was recorded stereo when in reality it wasn't.
Right. Okay. I might just wait to
Okay.
see what you mean because I'm already confused, but
Okay.
thank you.
All right. So basically, if you got the volume and the panning right, that is 50% of your mix. Like at that point, it should sound way better than when you pulled the audio in and everything was all over the place. Because if you don't get this bit right, and then you try to use limiters and compressors to sort out issues, that was gonna be just a simple volume push or pull, then you're gonna have loads of problems. Things gonna be fighting with each other, you're gonna get distortion, etc., and you won't really know what's going on anyway, to pick up what might be too loud, because all your faders are flat on the same place. So it's very important that these two things get started right at the beginning, gets done right at the beginning. Okay, now
Anna,
what?
I've got a question just about volume, because I've seen different techniques in mixing. One is that starting with the volume
I
like
will
at
show you.
0, and
I
then the
will
other
show
one,
you.
oh, okay, cool.
Like we will go through all these steps in
Oh,
that
cool.
project. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, what's next? Okay, now we're gonna tidy up. So we're gonna do some EQing. But what's important is the type of EQing, which will be subtractive EQing, which I know I mentioned before, when we did some racks and vocals and whatnot. Is when you use filters, so you take out the low end from whatever doesn't need the low end, like vocals, take out the high ends for whatever doesn't need a high end, like the kick, because things are recorded, created, there are harmonics that just can be, you know, little information that doesn't belong there, not part of the fundamental frequency, but if we leave all of it in, then it will kind of get in the way of the instrument that's supposed to be there. Like if we have strings, guitars, loads of vocals, if we don't cut out the low end from those, because none of those needs any low frequencies, then all of that gonna add up and actually get in the way of the bass itself. So that's why we're cleaning things out, so every instrument can come through where it needs to come through. And then once that's done, then now it's not just the volume right and the panning is nice. We should also have a kind of cleared up mix. So everything should already sound a little better. But then we might realize that there are bits of the track that simple volume balance didn't really resolve. Think about a vocal recording. So there is the verse, which was sung quite intimately. So obviously there's not much volume to it. And then there's an intense chorus comes in, which is obviously way louder than the verse. So then you might find yourself chasing your tails of, if you adjust the volume fader to the vocals verse, then you'll be very happy. But as soon as the chorus plays, like, oh, you gotta pull it down because, oh God, the chorus is really loud now. So then which one do you know, adjust the volume to? So there's two things you can do. You can put the verse into one track and then put the chorus into another track. That would be probably the easiest if it's very, very different in terms of volume. But if it's just a little bit more intense, then that's when we're gonna start compression, which is not gonna affect like the volume of all the tracks. It will affect the dynamic range of each of the tracks, which is in an audio the quietest and the loudest part. Does that make sense? Yeah, so things don't jump out and we have like a consistent volume. So that will be the next thing. And at this point, everything should be way better because everything is clean, everything is controlled dynamically. So everything should be like, you know, really concise and consistent. And then another EQ round will come in, which is a little bit more fun. The additive EQing, when you start having the idea that, oh, these vocals sound too dark for this track, I need it to be brighter. So how you can achieve that you're going to push the high frequencies, or you will want a crispier snare sound, so you're going to push the high mid frequencies, or you want, you know, a more powerful bass, so you're going to push the fundamental frequency of the bass. Do you know what I mean? That the removal already happened before the compression, so you don't need to remove anything. This time, you adding frequencies in. And does any of you doesn't have a question if you already have an EQ there? Why don't I just go back to the first EQ and do this? Like, why would I be crazy to use two EQs when I already have one?
Is it just to sort of make the process less confusing?
Yeah, one point, but no, really, that's not the real reason.
Is
The kind
it
of technical reason. Yes.
is it to just add, as you said, add more, like if you want, let's say, the chorus to sound a bit more powerful, and then when it goes into the second verse, you want it to come down a bit more? Is that what you mean?
No, it's on
Okay.
the same track. We have two EQs. Why do I not go back to the first one to add dim frequencies?
Because you've taken, right at this point when you're adding stuff in, you don't want to, if you went back to the original one, you run the risk of adding things back to it that you took out before, and you don't want those to go back in.
Even
that-
I can add it back in the second EQ as well, because I actually don't see what's
Yeah.
in the first EQ. So I could easily do that in the second one as well.
Is it because of the way that you've done it, so you've added compression afterwards?
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Exactly. Because what happens with the compression, it will take the input level and then work with that. So once we extracted frequencies, then we landed, let's say, just an example, on -2 decibels of the vocals, yeah? And that's what we compress with. We set up the compressor for that. But then if I go back and I add some high frequencies, the vocals then might end up -3 decibels or 1 or whatever, but not the loudness level that I've set the compressor for. So if you go back to the first EQ and you boost something, you will have to reset your compressor because you change the dynamics that goes into the compressor. That's why you use 2 EQs. So you don't have to keep going back to your compressor. Does that make sense? But good tries. But I can see the logic behind every single guess that went there. Yeah. And then what we do. So then after that, you have like an optional decision. You could compress again if you feel the need, because you might, highlighted something with that EQ boost that now it's a bit more inconsistent, or you're working on different dynamics that you set this second compressor with different settings than the first one. So it's optional. If you feel like that there still needs to be another round of dynamic control, then you compress. If you don't, then you don't. And then once you've done all of this, that's when the fun stuff starts, because then you can start adding the creative effects. Yeah, because if these things don't happen beforehand, if the audio is not clear and you add the reverb, it's never going to sound nice because you're reverberating all the unwanted frequencies as well. If if you add distortion, same thing, you're going to distort or saturate frequencies that shouldn't even be there. So you're just going to highlight the problem. So it's very important that everything is clean and controlled before we can go in with, the creative effects. Okay, so this is the workflow. And then once you've done all of this, you should be done. And then you can ship it off for mastering. Any questions?
We're going to go through it now.
Oh, yes.
Oh, fab. Thank you.
Okay, so let's put all of this into practice, because there's quite a lot to do here. So first thing first, can't see the tracks properly, like the waveform. So I'm going to select all the tracks and then pull them down a bit so I can actually see what's up. Now, you remember that I've been raving about this setting in record, warp, and launch, to have this off, auto warp long samples. Because what are these stems? Long samples. And what's your default BPM of the session? 120. There's very little chances that the stems you will be given is 120. So if you have the auto warp on for these long samples, Live will try to warp the audio. And because we have all these silences at the beginning, the warp engine will take this into consideration and it will totally mess up the audio. It's going to warp it everywhere and nowhere, and it's going to be horrendous. Now, if you did make the mistake that you didn't take that off, you can still, save the day. And if you double click on the track, then we can see that this is in fact warped. So now we know we shouldn't have that warped. So I'm going to select all the tracks, all the clips, and then take off warping. So now none of them are warped anymore. And then when that happens, then you might have to go to the end of the clips, because obviously the audio was shrinked because of the warping. So now it's not warped. Therefore, there is probably still audio to be pulled out. That is a natural behavior because we changed the tempo of the audio. So that's, that's done. That's good so far. There we go. So the color coding. So we got a kick drum here, another kick drum here, a drum loop, a mid section, drums, clap, shaker, bass, bells. Those are actually in quite good order. But then you see we have guitars and strings in between vocal harmonies. So those will definitely have to go somewhere else. Also this bell, I'm going to put it together with the drums. So I'm just going to select all these tracks, right click, and then color them red. And then I would want, this is still not enough visual representation for me because the clips are still all kind of colors. So if I select back those tracks again and then right click again, then I can choose this option, assign track color to clips. So then I don't need to recolor them one by one, just click on it. And now all the tracks that were set to red on the track head, the clips also became red. Bass, so for me that's gonna go green and assign that to the other one. Lead vocal, lead vocal, lead vocal, that will go pink. I actually think we don't even need that many lead vocals. Backing vocals. So there are chorus and outro backing. Oh my God, there are so many vocals here. Anyway, before we color code that, let's get this guitar, string, low string, reverse sweep out from the middle of the vocals. So I'm just gonna move that up between the bass and the vocals. And there's also this white noise situation here that's also gonna come up here together with this sweep because they are effects. Okay, so bass. After bass, the logical thing would be sort of kind of building from low frequencies down to high frequencies. That after the bass, the low string will come in, then the high string, then the guitars, and then the white noise and the sweep, which are effects. So the strings can be orange, and then assign the track color. Guitar, I usually have that blue. And then the effects, I usually have them white. Lead vocals, backing vocals. Okay, so these are all over the place. Also, this one, no, that's actually named properly. Okay, so chorus. BV1 chorus, BV3 chorus, BV4 chorus, outro, outro. I don't trust this. There you go. So this one is actually wrong, named wrong because it says BV2 outro, but you can see it's actually the chorus one because these are the outro ones. This is belonging there, so we need to rename that. BV chorus 3, because that's the one that we were missing. No? 2 actually, because we were 1, 3, 4, so we were missing BV2 chorus. Okay, so let's make those purple. And then the outro ones, slightly different purple though. Yeah, that will do. And then we got 2 harmonies as well. Actually, I'm gonna move that up to after the lead vocals, because I'll do the harmonies before I do the backing vocals. And let's color them this pink. And then this can calm down. Okay, look at that. Isn't that better to navigate? Now I can find everything going by color. I don't need to be looking for stuff. Now, let me play this back a little bit. Did you guys hear that? Yeah, okay.
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout. put me out my misery. Won't you come and set me free?
Look at the master.
'Cause I've been
Red.
sitting here like a bird with broken wings, trying to fly. I hit the ground.
Yeah, so we can clearly hear that the volume is all over the place, so we need to, resolve this. So most of the engineers who I worked with as well, they start with the drums, and to be fair to me as well, that makes the most sense, because the drums is something that will have all kind of frequencies, because you will have the kick, you will have the, which is in the low end, you will have the snare, clap, which is in the mids, the hi-hat shaker, which is more in the highs. And also that's what kind of gives the backbone of the track. So, I don't know, to me as well, it makes more sense. There was only one guy in my entire career who started with the vocals for some reason. To me, it was absolutely wild. Like how are you mixing around the vocals when, like, how do you determine the correct level of the vocals when essentially the drums will be the loudest? So do you know what I mean? It just didn't make any sense, because then you will have to adjust the vocals anyway at the end. So, but just know there are different ways how people approach it. I think what makes more sense is starting with the drums. So how do we rebalance the mix? We're basically gonna start from 0. So I'm gonna select every single track and then pull down the volume fader for every single one of them. So now if I press play, you see nothing is playing because all the faders are down at the bottom. Why is that good? Because then we don't need to go, how can you mix properly the drums if you consistently hearing the loud vocals and the basses and whatnot? And then if you try to do it by soloing the drums, then at some point you want to hear the kick, you're going to lose all the other solos that you had. So again, messy workflow, kind of chasing your tails again. Also, doing this workflow can be really good to kind of rediscover as well the mix, even if it's your track, because if you've been working on something for like 3 months and then you decide to mix it down, and you work for so long, it might be a really big track as well. There might have been some little instruments that masked, so you don't even really remember it's there because you couldn't really hear it. And when you do these adjustments, then you are like, oh shit, that sound is there. Like, oh, okay, that's nice. Let's put this up or the left or the right or whatever. So it's a good refresher, even if it's your song of what the hell is inside your mix. Now, how are we gonna get the loudness done when we have all these faders down? So we're gonna need to be watching the meter on the master. So our main goal is that the final mix, once everything is mixed, volume's done, etc., the mix needs to end up between -3 to -6 decibel, somewhere here. Yeah, not at 0, because that's where the mastering engineer will put it. It needs to end up somewhere here, because you need to give that remaining space that's there for the mastering engineer to add their own processing. Because if you mix your track to 0, then they have no space to add other compressor, other EQ. So all they're gonna do is maybe limit the song, but that's all they can do because you literally didn't give them space to do their processing. But that's something that if you hire a mastering engineer, they will actually tell you how they want the mix, what level. So, even if you done it to 0, you have to go back and pull everything down because otherwise they won't be able to do fuck all. So obviously there is a little bit of help with this I can give you, how to approach from the first sounds. So if I bring in my kick drum and I immediately put it up to -6, then I'm kind of setting myself up to going back and forth because all I have is the kick drum, but I already exhausted all my meter, all my space. Do you know what I mean? Like if the kick drum on its own, it's -6. Anything else I'm gonna add, it's gonna push the volume up. So general rule, good starting point. If you start with the kick, if you make that around -18, just your kick drum, then probably by the end, when you added everything in, you will land naturally around -6 on the master. If not, then obviously we can raise the overall volume up or down, but then you will have to do that only once at the end, not having to go back and forth. So yeah, mixing kick drum to around -16, 18, that's a good start. Okay, so let's do that. The very important part as well is that we need to make sure that we adjust always the loop, because obviously we need the playback head to play whichever track we're bringing in. So I'm just going to quickly go there, loop this area up, and then let's go. So first thing, first kick. So watching the meter, can go a bit louder. There we go. So that's a good starting point, and the kick is hitting around -18. And now we can bring in the next one. And not the drum loop yet. Let's put in the clap. So I'm going to change the order. Let's bring in the shaker. Oh, wrong track. And then we have a drum loop layer. See how much we're running out of space? We started off at -18. Now we are above -11 because that's how much the drums took up. Now let's bring in this horrendous bell. Okay, now we need to go to somewhere in the middle where those mid drums are in there. We will definitely have to revisit this because there's no context to that. Like we don't have any other instruments playing, so we will probably have to come back to this. All right, next, bass. So why bass next? Why don't I go to the strings? Why would I do the bass after the drums?
Is it because it's got lower frequencies?
Exactly, because there is the kick drum. In fact, there are two kick drums in there, and they're sitting exactly on the same frequency range as the bass does. So it's important that we balance them out. And also this is the place where we can pick up if there is frequency masking going on, which is going to be done by the bass, because the kick drum is a short sound, bass sounds are way longer. So it's not the kick will mask the bass, it's the bass will mask the kick. And that's when you're going to make the executive decision to come back to it and sidechain it. So the kick drum can get out of the way of the, the bass can get out of the way of the bass. With this track, I don't think particularly we'll need sidechaining because the bass is quite staccato, but I will show you how to do that. Let's solo them. What's the situation? Yeah, they're good. Let's go low string. High string, which is not playing. Okay, this is the time when I need to solo a bit. Okay, there is this guitar effect there somewhere. White noise. Okay, that's that mid bass, mid drums. Okay, sweep. Okay, cool. Now there's one thing you saw me do at some point because I couldn't see where the high strings were playing because the waveform is so small. Like, you know, I didn't see. So there is this little guy here in Live 12, which allows you to change the waveform size for all the clips in here. So you see, if it was sent to me like this, I can barely see the waveform. Like I couldn't say where that white noise is playing. So it doesn't change the volume of anything. It just changes the display of the size of the waveform. So we can push it up so we can actually clearly see what's playing where. You know, it just makes everything easier. So we have a fairly balanced instrumental. So now we can start dealing with the vocals. We have 3 of them, and I think one of them is there by mistake. So we need to investigate that, which we will be doing by looking at the waveform. So now I'm gonna have to pull it down. And zoom in to see if any of them are exactly the same. Okay, these are sus. No, it's actually triple recorded. They all, you see, they all slightly different. So to go back to that question with the stereo situation, it's the same vocals, yeah. So this is one. Don't have the volume up, do I?
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream
And then the second one is the same.
My head keeps spinning around, just one.
So together.
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout.
Yeah, it's the same audio, but it's just slightly different, the timing. So this, if we pan this apart, this will be truly stereo because it's not exactly the same audio. So let's actually pan it already. Let me just make sure at this point that I'm streaming in stereo, so you can actually hear it.
My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout. Put me out my misery, won't you come?
So now that is truly stereo. Anyway, let me go back to where we were. We made the identification that everything is actually okay with these vocals. Let's go to the beginning. I'm gonna pull both of them down. Start with the first one.
Spinning around, just wanna scream and shout. Put me out my misery, won't you come and set me free?
Next one.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings, trying to fly. I hit the ground. You're the air I haven't found. My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout.
Oh, I messed up. This is the first one.
Won't you come and set me free? 'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings, trying to fly. I hit the ground. You're the air I haven't found. My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout. Put me
Okay, that's cool. Now let's have a look at these harmonies to layer on the top.
down. You're the air I haven't found. You're the air I haven't found. You're the air I haven't found. Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm and all.
Okay, let's go to the chorus with all these backing vocals.
Close my eyes to say goodbye to being lonely. Baby, I'm yours to find. I close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely. Baby, I'm yours to find. Close my eyes to say goodbye to being lonely.
Okay, let's check them all together.
Close my eyes and realize lonely. Close my eyes, say goodbye, lonely. Baby, I'm yours to find.
Okay, cool.
Close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely.
Okay, I'm not gonna do the outro vocals because it would be the same workflow, and otherwise, you know, we already spent 50 minutes, so I'm gonna move on from this volume situation. Now, panning. So everything, it sounds nice now, no?
Close my eyes to say good. Close. My head keeps spinning around, just wanna scream and shout. Put me out my misery, won't you come and set me free?
Yeah, I think it sounds decent. Now, most importantly, let's have a look at the meter.
Close my eyes to
So we are hitting around -5. And what did I say? That the final mix needs to be -3 to 6. So that means currently the mix is too loud, because I'm going to add on the top of it EQ, I will add limiting, I will add compression, I will probably add saturation, things that going to add more volume to the track. So I need to leave some space for that. So we're just going to pull down the entire mix, just, for now, just by maybe 2 decibels. And then you can do this again anytime. So I'm going to again select the first track and then select the last track. Well, not those, because those are not there yet. There we go. And then I can just pull down the faders, all of them at the same time, so I won't lose the actual balance of the faders. And can check the meter that while that happens. We're going to do that in the chorus because that's the loudest point.
Close my eyes
Oh.
to say goodbye to being lonely. Baby, I'm yours.
Yeah, they move together.
I close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. One super important thing, never, ever touch the master fader. Like, ever. If something is loud, if the master fader is in red, because everything that's going into the master fader, if you pull down the fader, you might get rid of the redness, but the tracks that's going in, they are still too loud, and there will be distortion. And you won't even see it anymore because you touched the master fader. So the master fader always needs to be on 0. And if it starts clipping, there is red, then you do what I just did, select all the tracks and pull down all the faders a little bit together. That's how you get rid of peaks and distortion, not by touching the master fader. It's when I see my students handing in something, if I see the master fader touched, that's it. They lose an entire grade, because I say this all the time, and that's such an important part of mixing, because if you forget about this, it doesn't matter how many plugins and what you're gonna be putting on the tracks. It's just never gonna translate well, because you're actually not hearing what properly should be coming out of the master. Or especially if you're inexperienced in it, you pull down the master and there obviously will be consistent clipping, but you might not going to be able to identify it, so there just might be in your ear and just like, yeah, sounds weird, but I don't know what's going on because the master is not clipping. Do you know what I mean? Just try to tattoo this into your brain. Yeah, there's 2 things I would tattoo on myself: is collect all and save, and don't touch the master fader. That's the 2 things. Okay, so panning. What can be pan and what cannot pan? Because there are a little bit of rules which are not rules because somebody said so. It's because it's a rule sonically, otherwise you can't get a good mix. So first thing first, kick drum, always mono, never pan the kick drum. Clap, snares, if it's layered, like you have 2 claps or 3 claps in the same time, then you can slightly pan one to the left, one to the right, but there must be one in the middle, because it would sound so unnatural. Like, let me play you this. I will pan. Just the clap to the side. What am I doing? Okay, that, and that. Is it not bothering you?
Yeah, it's well annoying.
Exactly. So with panning, be careful that whatever you pan, it's not becoming destructive. You know what I mean? Because then you're going to take people out of the mix. Because if I had to listen to this song through with this snare, for the entirety of the time, I would be like, why the fuck is this snare on the right? You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't really pay attention to this. Obviously, back in the day, like Beatles vibes and stuff like that, there were like really, really drastic pannings. Like there are a couple of Beatles songs where the entire drum kit is on one side, but because there was such limited equipment, you know, no computers, you know, and also just music production and mixes weren't that advanced, you know, like you listen back to first Beatles album, like it sounds how it sounds. Like you can tell it was mixed centuries away. Anyway, so does this make sense why we would leave this in the middle? Like driving elements should be in the middle. Then with shakers and all kind of percussive stuff, that's where you can get creative. That's where you should get creative. If you have toms, like floor tom, rock tom, pan them a little bit, not entirely to the side, because again, it's going to be very destructive. But, you know, just gently, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. If you have congos, bongos, oh my God, pan them as well. Because it's gonna give such nice dimension to the drums. So driving elements, kick, snare, clap, always in the middle. Percussions can go on the sides everywhere. Okay, let's put this clap back where it was. Now, the shaker situation that will answer Becca's question in a different way. So, like I said, this shaker is mono itself, yeah, because it was recorded in one take with one microphone, yeah. So even if I told you this, if you put this to the left and the right, then it's not gonna be truly stereo. I'll show you. So now I duplicated the track. It's still not stereo because it's exactly the same sound. It's just, they are just both on the side. So the way we could manipulate this to be stereo is, for example, well, two things. Now that I duplicated this track, what we're gonna do, we're gonna zoom in, but like big time zoom in. Like really, really zoom in and then nudge it just a little bit behind. You see, if I zoom out, you won't even really see that nudge. Yeah, it's just a very little amount, very, very little amount. And then we can also add slight delay in like maybe ping pong. So it's got a bit of dimension to it, audio effects. Like with a short time, not very long delay, you know, when it's like tim, 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 just very, very short delay time. So let's just work on this one. Okay, I can definitely hear the delay. Let's put it to 2. Yeah, we can hear the difference. And now bring it together with the original one. Now it sounds stereo. Does that make sense? Because one of the sides are not entirely the same anymore. So yeah, this is obviously would sound way nicer if it was recorded with 2 microphones, but still it's in a whole track. Nobody will notice that it's not like that. However, the shakers are stereo now. Now, if you don't want this, you just want to control the panning differently, that maybe you would want a little bit less on the left side and a little bit more on the right side. So this is a balance. It's a balance control, yeah. So we can put this into, if we right click on it, split stereo pan mode. And this is a very Pro Tools thing. So now you have control over the left side and the right side. And this would be especially useful if the recorded audio was stereo itself, you know, on one track. Yeah, so you can use this, pull off a little bit from the right. Or the left. Let's make it a bit louder on the right. Does it make sense? Yeah, you have this other panning mode. Okay, so shakers, actually I'm gonna go back how it was because I think it would actually sound quite nice if it was stereo. So I'm gonna just try to or I won't. Nope, it doesn't allow me. Oh. Yep. Okay, let's put this back. I just undid everything, so I landed back on this situation. But now it's a bit too loud. Yeah, happy days. Okay. What else do we need to do? So this drum loop, because it's got everything in it, needs to stay in the middle because it's got kick, snare, everything. So it's staying where it is. Shaker's been dealt with. Then we have this we're gonna have to work on these bells. It's gonna EQ the crap out of it. Listen to the ringing. Oh, at the end, do you hear at the very end? Oh God. Anyway, we're gonna take that out, but it stays as it is. And then this mid section, again, it's a whole loop. So there's nothing we can pan here. Yeah. Maybe I would put like an auto filter on it later. It can go a little bit left and right. I don't know. We'll see. Strings. So those can be panned, definitely. So the low string, it is quite low at this point. And it's getting in the way of the bass. Yeah, because the low strings, there is quite loads of frequency where the bass is. So we'll definitely have to EQ there. So we will revise the panning of the strings. But for now, I'm going to put the low string a little bit to the left. And then the high string a little bit more to the right. Yeah, not all the way because they are dominant instruments. Also, I would want to have some of that nice harmony at the very, very sides, you know, so I'm kind of keeping that space up there. Guitar, mono signal staying in the middle, white noise, reverb, sweep staying in the middle. Lead vocals always stays in the middle. I think we talked about this. If your song gets played out in a club, in a festival, the sound system, the speakers are mono. So, you know, you have a very nice stereo mix. And then as it gets folded down to mono, if your lead vocals were on the left, right, because it gets folded down, therefore, they're going to become way quieter than they were originally. Yeah. And then because we are doing loads of panning, I will show you, have I not showed you yet how to check your mix in mono? SU mixing. Actually, I'll show you now. So there is, you know, I always tell you this is one of my favorite devices, even though it's the most boring device, or probably the most useful, called utility. So I'm going to put that onto the master. And you see currently we have this stereo option, but we have a mono button here. So what that means that I can play back the whole mix. And let's check it in mono. Stereo. What did we lose? The shaker, because the shaker went really, really wide, which is okay. It's still there, so I wouldn't really worry about it. As soon as you can, first of all, it's not a very important part of the track, and as long as you can hear it still, all good. But imagine if we have the vocals put very wide. In fact, let me do that. I'm just gonna take out all of these guys. Just give me a second. Okay. So now I'm gonna pan the lead vocals to the sides.
To say goodbye to being lonely. Baby, I'm yours to find. I close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely.
And now I'm gonna push to mono.
Baby, I'm yours.
Oh, actually we're very mono. So now it's in stereo.
To say goodbye to being lonely.
Yeah, very nice and wide.
Baby, I'm yours.
But then we go to mono.
I close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely.
Yeah, we lost some of the volume of the vocals. So therefore, how are we going to approach this? Because we have tripled lead vocals, so we can still make it quite wide. But what's just important, and you might ask like, oh, so in electronic tracks, how are the vocals so wide and doesn't cause any issues when being played in the club? It's because there is always a layer which is mono, exactly for this. So once it gets folded down from stereo to mono, that mid-panned lead vocal can carry still the vocals. You just lose some of the other layers which were wide. So it's very, very, very important that the main lead vocal should be in the middle. And if you want to create the illusion of wideness, then you duplicate the track a couple of times. You add a little bit of delay, this and that, and then you pan them across. But you still have that one middle vocal that will always be there, no matter what you pan where. Does that make sense? Okay, let me put this back. Right, so lead vocal stays in the middle.
To say goodbye to being lonely.
And then this can go just a little bit to
Baby,
the side.
I'm yours to find. I close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely.
Harmonies gonna all the way go to the sides. That's just gonna sound absolutely lush.
To say goodbye to being lonely.
Let me take out the backing vocals so we can focus on the harmonies, which are playing here.
I hit the ground. You're the air I haven't found. Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm and all.
So I just took off mono. Yeah, can we hear the wideness now?
I hit the ground. You're the air I haven't found.
Nice, on the sides.
Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm and all.
I think they are a little loud.
I want is to turn it all around. I hit the ground. You're the air
Yeah, nice.
Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm and all.
Okay, let's bring in a 10 million of backing vocals. So what do we have here? So we need to know whichever is the lowest harmony, that should be the least on the side. Yeah, because we talked about this, whatever is low frequency is always in the middle, centered. So that cannot move a lot. Remember with the low string as well, I didn't pan it as much as the high one because it's not EQ'd yet. So at this point, I really can't do that. So let's see, backing vocal 1.
Close my eyes.
Okay, 2,
Close my.
same.
Close my. Close my.
Mm.
Close my. Close. Close.
Well, there isn't that much difference, but anyway, that's just gonna go a little bit.
Close my eyes to say goodbye to being lonely. Baby, I'm yours to find. I close my eyes and realize I'm tired of being lonely.
Okay, so you see the situation here that the harmonies are the one that's fully panned to the sides. And then the backing vocals, they are all also fairly wide, but not all the way, just because I'm kind of trying to space them, you know, out nicely. So that is probably how I would pan this, because then if I pan everything hard left and right, then they start clashing a little bit because there is nothing really in between the center and hard left and right. Does that make sense? Like there is a whole stereo spectrum. So we need to put stuff in between the middle and the very sides. Otherwise it's gonna sound a bit hollow, that there are just parts of your stereo field that has basically nothing really in it. Okay, cool. Well, now if I play back, it definitely should way nicer than where we started from.
Out my misery, won't you come and set me free? Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm, and all I want is to turn it all around. I close my eyes to say goodbye to being lonely. Baby, I'm yours.
So I think the vocals are loud, too loud, all of them. So we're gonna just go and select all of them and then just pull down the faders a little bit without losing the volume.
Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm, and all I want.
Okay, that's cool. Anyway, now you might fear that it's like, oh, some words are loud enough, but some of them not, is because it's not compressed. Yeah, because it's not leveled out. So once we add the compression, even some limiting, that it will get the vocals way more balanced and upfront, so it can, you know, kind of get through the mix without being this like shaky that it disappears and then comes back, etc. Okay, so let's move on to EQing, because we done. To be fair, these were like I told you, we basically done 50% of the mix already. Like, how much better does it sound already? So I think we talked about this too, the frequency chart situation. Go away. And this is going to be very important to make the decisions what needs to go from where, especially, you know, when it says, you know, boost at 800 and then something is gonna be crispy. Yeah, it's good guidance, but how was this recorded? Is there even enough frequencies at 800 to make it crispy? You know what I mean? That's just like not something you can fully rely. You rely on your ears that if you want to make it crispy, then you move the EQ until it sounds crispy, not read it off that always should be 800, because there might not be nothing at 800. But this is important for cutting, for doing the subtractive EQing. So it already tells us that female vocal if we come all the way down, dum 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 dum, there it shows you that you can cut pretty much everything below 120 hertz. I usually only cut 100 because just the voices I work with, they have a little bit more body and low end. But definitely if somebody has this like really nice, like airy, intimate vocals, you know, then you can cut all the way up till 150 as well. But there is absolutely no reason to have any frequencies not cut out in a female vocal below 100 hertz, because all you have there is noise and crap, which eventually will end up in the way of the bass. Now, with male vocals, obviously, you can't cut that much because their pitch is lower, meaning they have low frequencies, because pitch is defined by frequency. So there you're gonna have to be careful. You still shouldn't really have anything below 60, because obviously you shouldn't have sub-bass frequencies in it, although there might be some because it's just noise. But it depends on the man's voice. Again, if it's like a soft R&B singer, you can probably cut a bit more. Probably if it's like a punk rock singer, then you will have to cut a bit less because they have more powerful and more low-pitched voice. So, you know, make sure it just sounds how you want it. Also, I don't know if I told you this story that I had a track that needed like some R&B-ish vocals, and it was so last minute. And one of my best friends is a pop and punk rock singer, so I had to get him to sing it. I had to produce the fuck out of him because obviously we had all this like growly, like the way he starts words, you know, like you know, that style. And also quiet, like, you know, crispy and aggressive, whatever. And I was just like, oh my God, like I need this to sound nice and sexy and smooth. You need to stop all of this. So it took me, probably would have taken half an hour to record. It took me 5 hours because I had to keep telling him, don't do it, do it this way. Okay, again. And also his voice was not R&B. So
was his did he use vocal fry techniques? Was that what he was using?
I think so. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with that type of singing, but it's definitely not something that suits my tracks.
Okay.
So what was I going to say? Yeah. So once you can get the kind of performance style out, but that wasn't enough because again, it's just his tone wasn't set for that. So you can EQ someone to make them sound younger, for example, because we know older people have crispier voice because they use their voice more, or, you know, they smoked a pack of red Marlboro and had 2 glasses of brandy for the last 20 years. So, you know what I mean? Like you could tell on the microphone as well if an older person speaks. So, you know, dipping down those frequencies and pushing maybe the highs, you can actually physically sound someone younger. So that's what I did with him, produced him and EQ'd it out. And his wife is a singer. I showed the track to him. She couldn't believe it was him. So everything is doable with right tools. And trust me, I had to cut way more than 60 hertz to make him sound sexy R&B. So yeah, this wouldn't have been helpful for me, this graph. Okay, let's move down. So keys can go from anywhere, but same, I don't agree with this because if there is, you know, if there's a sim sound that's got loads of low end, it can overshadow the bass. I would cut that out at least until 80 hertz, just so the very low frequencies of the kick can go through. Strings. So you see, bass, that's what the fundamental frequency is, 60 to 80. So that's what we're trying to keep clear, yeah, from every other instrument, so that poor bass can get through. Now we can see what do we have here. So cello, they can be a little challenging, definitely need to cut out until like 80 or 100 because they are so low in pitch. that they tend to get in the way of the bass. You see guitars, you don't need anything, again, below 100, 120 hertz. Yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. Yeah, so kick drum, what does it show us? So here you see for the kick drum, you would actually do the opposite. There you need to cut the high frequencies because there might be some ringing, and those frequencies will bleed into where the vocal is supposed to be, where the, you know, where the string's supposed to be. So there you do the opposite, that you cut higher frequencies from the kick, the toms, snare, not as much that you lose the body. So you should cut only out as much that you don't necessarily hear a massive difference after cutting. Yeah, because you're just getting rid of the crap leftover stuff, not important stuff. Like never cut out important frequencies where, let's say, you cut too much of a low string and now the string it sounds tiny and thin, and you know you basically lost half of the instrument. So that would be too much cutting. Okay, does this make sense? Right. So let me teach you some sound theory, some psychoacoustics, because it's important that you understand it. So what you have seen already in live, if we look at the meters, remember how much I had to push the kick drum and how much I had to push the bass. Look at that. It's one of the highest faders there. And I had to keep pushing, making it loud in order to hear it. And there is a reason for it, because human beings, the way our ear is working and biologically designed, we are pretty deaf to bass frequencies. We do not hear bass frequencies well. And there is some evolutional reasons for it too. It's because there is loads of noise around us, which are low frequencies, very small amount. So we can kind of shut those out a little bit. Also, we cannot localize bass sound at all. But because we cannot hear basses well, when you go to a rave, a festival, you're kind of far away and you can hear the thumping, not even hear, but feel the thumping of the festival. And it's because of that, because the bass has to be so bloody loud for us to perceive it the same way as all the other instrument parts. And wave frequencies are the largest frequencies, so they are the ones that travels the further away. But the localization. So you go into the rave, yeah, and you hear all that bass or feel all that bass. You're pretty close, especially if it's an illegal rave, you know, so you have to like kind of go everywhere around in the trees. You wouldn't go after your ear. You would still need to use the signs on, you know, which way to go, especially if it's in a forest, because you simply cannot localize where exactly the sound is coming from. And that's something you all must have experienced, because you all must have been in some kind of open air noisy environment. So this is a real thing. We cannot localize bass frequencies. On the other hand, though, high frequencies, and especially around 6,000 hertz, we are hyper sensitive to that. Anybody's got any idea why that could be? No? Because that is the frequency around the area of speech. Yeah, when we speak, those are the main frequencies. So we are super sensitive to that. again, evolutionary reasons, so people can communicate and hear each other. Also, even above those frequencies, we are also super sensitive to high frequencies up until about 11K, because that's where baby cry is. So if you ever, don't know if you have children, but even if you don't, you've been on a bus, you've been on a tube. If that baby cries, you can absolutely not ignore it. Doesn't matter how much you try, and there are so many other things you can ignore. You can ignore the other person's TikTok, the video, the crisp chewing, whatever. There's so many things you can actually just shut out and ignore, but not baby cry. And evolutionary reason, because imagine if a mother is sleep deprived, haven't slept for 4 days, and would be able to just tune out the baby would die. Do you know what I mean? Simple as that. And that is also meaning that females hear a little bit differently from males, because we do have a little bit of difference in our ears. Also, as we age, we are losing some of our hearings. It goes from the top end. But the good news is, so this is called plasticity in our brain as we age. There's loads of things changes in our brain as we age. And the good news is that if you use ear protection all the time, and if you actually keep mixing and doing stuff where you're really focused on frequencies, but in a safe level, you can delay the hearing loss and the loss of perception of things, because you constantly, something that you're training and doing and practicing and focusing on. About ear protection, so you can lose your hearing. You can actually fast track losing those frequencies if you don't use ear protection. So are you guys interested in this shit, by the way? Okay, just because I'm going on a tangent, because this is what I'm studying and I love this stuff. So in our ears, on the outside of the cochlea, there are little hairs. There are inner hairs and there are outer hairs, yeah? And as the sound source vibrates, it will go into our ear, and then our eardrum will start going back and forth, and then it goes down deeper in the inner ear, and then the outer hairs are going to be moving a little bit, and then it will get to the inner hair as well. And what happens that these little hairs are responsible, you have loads of them, like loads of them. They are responsible for perceiving different frequencies. Yeah, just imagine them like little cute, very small hairs inside your ear. The sad news is, this is like a tragic explanation, but every single time when you go out, you don't wear ear protection, and you come back home and your ear is ringing. Everybody must have experienced it. So what happens in your ear, those frequencies which are ringing, the hairs which are responsible for those frequencies are dying. That's why your ear is ringing, because you're losing those hairs and you're losing some of the frequencies that you can perceive. People with tinnitus, there is a little bit of other thing going on, because the brain is trying to compensate for the hearing loss. So there is octave ringing in the ear, but at that point there is a massive hearing damage. If it's not very, very bad, tinnitus actually can go away nearly completely. But if that was a massive shock to the ear and very long time of abuse, it will stay for the entire life. It's kind of okay. People get trained how to shut out the ringing, what to do, but it gets really bad during the night because there is not many noises around you that could mask and distract your head, your brain from the ringing. So it's really hard and difficult to sleep with that. So tinnitus is serious shit.
Anna, when the hairs die, does it mean they die, like they don't come back?
No, they don't come back.
Oh my God.
It's not many of them. Like, you know, it's because usually you have that ringing when you come home for what, like a minute, because you're suddenly in a quiet environment. So it's not like half the frequency range dying in your ear. It's probably just one or two little hairs. But this is the thing, if it continues every weekend, then there's more until you will have hearing loss.
Anna, there's somebody on it's funny, just recently somebody on Facebook is doing these tuning forks, and it's the most amazing. One of them was 999 hertz, and it's just this ringing sound, and you feel it in your body. It's the most incredible. I haven't experienced it before, but he does all these these tuning fork sounds, and you hear it in the ear, the ringing in the ear, but then you feel it in your body, and it's just so weird.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's 999 hertz, which I think is meant to be the highest. It's kind of like a spiritual frequency. But he does some other ones really high. But if you just close your eyes and listen to it when he does it, you feel it in the body. It's amazing.
But if it's
I've just started getting into that.
But if it's 990 hertz, that's only 1 kilohertz. So that's
999 hertz. Yeah.
That's below speech range, so everybody would hear that. Is it not 90K, like the frequency that's out of our hearing range a little?
I'm sure it was 99 99 HZ. Yeah, it's angelic realms. It says that is out of the frequency. It's angelic realms. It's like spiritual realms. 999 HZ, which I thought was hertz.
Okay. Can you send that to me? That's really intrigues me.
Yeah, I'll find his. I've just started following him. He does other stuff, but he does these tuning forks. And I said I've only just started following recently because I just clicked on it just by accident, and he did, and this feeling just went right through my body. It was just amazing, and you hear about it and you think, yeah. So I started kind of listening to some of the other sounds he does, and yeah, you really feel it through. But and it's nice. It's kind of a nice feeling, not a. So I'll find his site and send it to you.
Please, yes, please. Speaking of that, when you get feelings, I think you all kind of picked up on it. The sub-bass frequencies, you don't really hear them, you feel them. Yeah. Another thing is, so you explained something pleasant. I'm not entirely sure because it's not covered in my course. It's something that I just know out of that. There are a frequency, like a combination and movement of frequencies, which is called the Brown frequency, which actually makes you shit yourself. It's true. It is true. Anyway, less disgusting way. So back to the high frequencies. So now, hopefully, you know that what's the reason that all the sirens are high-pitched, so you can actually imagine if it was like a low frequency, pleasant siren, like you'd love it because it's bassy, it's nice, but by the time you realize where the car comes from, you've been hit because you can't localize low frequencies. So that's why you have them really sharp, really loud, really to really alarm you and, put you into this fight or flight mode that, danger, danger, danger. Also these cars, which is a little more pleasant, but not that alarming. These like trash cars, and it has this like white noisy thing, this like turning left, turning right. And it's not a siren, it's just like a bunch of white noise, because white noise have all the frequencies in it. So you're still able to hear and localize where the thing is coming from, but it's more just there to make you aware that it's gonna turn or whatever. It's not like a police car that is sirening because it's going with 190 kilometer per hour. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, also. So why are we like evolutionary? How did our ear become sensitive to the speech? Because if you think about it, back in the day, in the Stone Age or whatever, people couldn't talk. It's not like they were having a conversation with a morning coffee. Do you know what I mean? They couldn't talk. So why would they be sensitive to speech frequencies? It's because, again, to stay alive, because usually one would be on the lookout, the other one would be go, hunt something, yeah? And then there was no WhatsApp to message the one out that, yo, the mammoth is coming. Do you know what I mean? So they would have to shout and be very sensitive to the human voice range so they can stay alive, yeah? So they can communicate in a way that helps them get food and stuff like that. I think it's just fascinating. The reason why I'm telling you all of this, because it will help you a lot with mixing, because you will soon realize that when you're doing your volume, if your speakers are very loud, then you will hear the bass nicely, but then you're going to perceive the vocals too loud because you're so sensitive to it. Then you're gonna eventually reduce the level of your speakers, because also if you're monitoring loud, you exhausting your ears faster. Like you will get tired faster. So then you put the volume down and then you be like, okay, those vocals could go back because now they are not that loud, but also shit, I lost my bass. So then you push up the bass, but then you start monitoring loud again, and then, oh, too much bass now. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, what's the deal with that? Because basically, what's the level then that you should be monitoring at if every single time you change the volume, you hear the track differently? This is why that I just explained how we hear. So you just need to be aware of it and choose a good level to monitor while you're mixing. That's not gonna exhaust your ears out, but you're only gonna be able to relatively hear everything well. Is just loud enough that if somebody entered the room and said your name, you could hear that. Yeah, if you're monitoring so loud that somebody actually can come into the room and you wouldn't notice and they have to shout your name multiple times, then you're monitoring way too loud in terms of like for a long period of time. And of course, at some point you should crank it up really loud just to check what it sounds really loud, and then put it all the way down just to check what it sounds if it's really quiet. But for the longest period of time for monitoring, that is a good level that you can still have some kind of awareness around you, so someone can still approach you. Does that make sense? Okay. Another thing, bass. So this is a good story, and it's a real life experience as well, unfortunately. Sub bass. So what did I just say? You don't hear them, you feel them. Now, unless you have a sub, like a sub, an actual sub, a big sub at home, there will be frequencies that you will not be able to hear in the level of loudness that they actually are. Because if you think about having your speaker, it's got like what, a 6-inch, woofer, or if you have a big one, maybe 8, but that's probably how big it goes with active mixing speakers. So there's only so much loudness that you can get out of that speaker to check your bass and your sub bass. So what happens then if you just leave in untouched the sub frequencies, because you can't really hear them, so why would you do anything to it? And then you take your track and it gets played in a festival, in a club. So what's going to happen, because the speakers are about 50 times bigger and the cone, like club nights go so loud. You know what I mean? It goes below, above 90 decibels. You could never hear something on that level at home. So what's going to happen? All of those sub-bass frequencies are going to be heard and probably won't be a good experience. So this has happened to me because my ex was a drum and bass DJ, and he was playing in a well-known club in Budapest, but it was also, because it was quite historical, it had this like kind of, how to say, rave vibe, you know, like it wasn't a really modernized club because of that. That was the vibe, which meant the sound system as well. So he put my track on, and I was rushing because I just finished the track that day, like 3 hours before his set. So I quickly limited this and that, made it really, really loud. Intro comes in, vocals, beautiful, you know, nice, delay, reverb, synths, amazing, sounds amazing. I was so happy. And then the fucking bass comes in, and literally it shook out everybody's organs, and he turned all the way down the bass on the decks, and it was still too much. And then I was thinking like, fuck, I've never actually looked at the sub because I was rushing. So yeah, that can be dangerous. That's why people tend to cut out on the master everything below 30 hertz, just to keep things safe. But the good news is, especially I think in London, festivals, big clubs, Fabric, whatever, they actually have a limiter on the sound system. So they're automatically cutting out everything below 40 hertz, exactly because of this, because you can't afford on a festival anything like this to happen. And let's face it, people will play half-finished tracks, unmastered tracks, so probably it would happen, but the technician, the sound technician, is making sure that it's not happening because the sound system is cut below 40. So if that was the case in that club, I wouldn't have even noticed that I left in all that sub. Probably little pubs, stuff like that, they might not pay attention to it. So just be aware that you might want to cut stuff below 30. But modern days, thank fuck, it gets done for you. Anyway, was that helpful? Are we cool now with what to monitor and what not? Another thing, headphones or speakers? That is the question at all times. Well, the best thing is both. Is both because, you know, there is noise around you. So sometimes you need very detailed and very unnaturally quiet environment, which is when you have headphones on, because, you know, that's not how you would ever listen to that song. Because if it was playing in a club, playing in your speakers, playing in your kitchen smart speaker, there will be noise around you. Yeah, there'll be the bus passing, the aircon going, the cat hissing, you know, whatever. So that's a very unnatural way to listen to music on these closed headphones, but that's your only way to hear every single little details. So you do that to really look after the details, but then you need to make sure that that mix also sounds good on speakers, because that's how people will hear it. Another thing, what kind of headphones? Should you use one headphone for your entire life? Yes and no. So every single headphone has a slightly different sound. None of the headphones are fully flat. Like some got about 5 headphones. My Sennheiser HD25, it's super bass heavy. So whatever I mix on that, I know I will have fuck all bass, basically, because the headphones were over exaggerating the bass. I've got an Audio Technica. There's just absolutely no bass in there. And then I have a very expensive Audi's LCD-X that is my mixing headphones, but it's open back. It's £1,200. The reason why I bought this was COVID, because the studios were closed and I had to mix. And that is the flattest pair of headphones, the closest you can get to mixing on speakers. So that was kind of a necessity. I'm not that big of a headphone snob. If COVID didn't happen, I would have never bought it. So you should have one headphone that you know inside out. You listen to countless songs on it, so you know exactly what it sounds like, so you can compensate your mix on it. You know what I mean? If you're really aware that, oh, my headphones tend to be a little too bassy, then you will take that into consideration when you're mixing. So you should have one that you know very, very well. And then you should have other ones just for referencing, if you can have. And also the shitter, the better. Actually, your most important tool where you should check your mix is the little iPhone earbuds. Because about 80% of the people who will listen to your song, that's where they're going to listen to your song. So it doesn't matter what my £1,200 headphone says, if it sounds like shit on an iPhone headphone. So it has to be a kind of compensation that you might thought on the very good speaker headphones that it was absolutely brilliant and done. But then you maybe realize that you focus too much on such details that actually is not translating in the little earbuds. So you have to compensate for that. So you need to make the tweaks in order to make sure they sound good in both. Loads of people do car tests, that they play the song in the car because the speakers are placed, back, forth, on the sides, etc. It's you just know it as well. If you listen to radio, it always sounds different in a car, But also, loads of people will listen to your songs in the car as well. So you do want to make it sound good there too. Also, phone. So phone test is a different kind of reason why you would want a phone test, because obviously we learned about that we only hear basses properly if we have big speaker cones, yeah? So in your phone, in that very, very microscopic speaker, there's fuck all bass, because it's impossible to have, because there's not a big speaker in the phone. So in that sense, you're not really checking for the bass there, but because of the lack of bass, your song might distorting on the high frequencies that you might don't pick up on the other sound systems. And again, let's face it, some people listen to songs on their phone because they are at work or they're sitting on a toilet or whatever. Sometimes I'm pretty sure you listen to something on your phone because you need it quickly and you don't have a speaker around you, and you don't hear that the vocals are like distorting and whatever. Like, it sounds fairly okay. So that's also a good reference point to check on your phone. Is it sounding something like release track? So then you can pick up like, oh, I have some harsh frequencies there. Speaker laptops, I mean, those are kind of hacked nowadays. They do have this little technology in like MacBooks that it's actually giving you the impression that there is bass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure you had a laptop 10 years ago, you played a song out of it, and it was actually hilarious. It sounded so bad because there was no technology really to get around this situation that small speakers can only play so little amount of frequencies. Also the same with phones. When you're on the phone, there's only so many frequencies you can hear, which is normal because, again, there is not a massive speaker in your ear and the microphone is not picking up all the frequencies from the speaker because of noise, because you need noise cancelling there. So, I think it is good knowledge to think about these things, that is all intentional and it all happens for a reason. And when you're experiencing loss of frequencies or hard decision making and you just don't really understand why, because you learned it should be like this, but you're not hearing that way, just think about these things. There's nothing you can do about psychoacoustic stuff because it's in your brain, it's coded, it's biology. So you just need to know this and work with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing would be is to go into mixing. Since we have 8 minutes left, I'm not, sorry, EQing, I'm not gonna get into that. But we have another class, the catch-up class. So then we can finish the EQ and the compression in that class. So I think, like, to be fair, for a full proper mixing teaching, a 4 hours class is a good one, because I could have mixed this for you in 2 hours, but then I couldn't have given you all this context. So I would have just set the fader on the bass and then wouldn't have told you why. I just would have done it. So I think this way now you have loads of context. Hopefully you go away, maybe do a bit of research on it, like, oh, how is that, etc. And then we will take it from there. But now, hopefully, all this information also helped you with some kind of ideas of how is this important to approaching EQing, because what we're going to be doing is messing with frequencies. So I think this is important. All right. Anybody's got any question?
Yeah.
Go on.
So in the next session then, we'll be doing the subtractive EQing, the compression, and
Yes.
then will we touch on the EQ,
Additive.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the creative FX too?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
fab.
in creative effects, we kind of already learned those because we built
Yeah.
effects. We learned about delay, echo,
Yeah.
roar, saturation, distortion. So you kind of already know those things. It's just what we're learning now as to what to do before them to make them sound good. But of course, as much time as we have, we will do it. Maybe talk about what to put on the master.
Yeah, because now that you've said that, I'm like, when you are putting creative FX on your track, are you only supposed to do it during the mixing process, or like do you do it both, like before mixing and whilst mixing? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So it will depend on what is going on. So if it's a record, like an actual record, like an indie band record, there were drums recorded, bass guitar, guitars, electric, acoustic, vocals, backing vocals, maybe some synths. So there would be definitely some effects and sound design stuff going on with the synths. But in that scenario, it was recorded and it goes on to mixing. So no creative effects at all. That person who recorded will do the editing as well, because mix engineers don't edit. That's not their job. So that would be recording, composition, and editing. That's how the engineer would ask for the stems. Now, obviously, there's two factors as well. First of all, that there are very little amount of in-person sessions in the studio. Anyway, I used to hate client-attended sessions because somebody's sitting behind you and asking you to make the vocals sound more green.
What does that even mean?
Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I just put some saturation and a bit more delay on it, and apparently it was green. Exactly, just all these weird things, like, how artists are who not that big on technology. They don't know the lingo, so they can say stuff like that, which can, by the time I figure out what they mean, it's like I wasted so much time. Anyway, so there's little amount of in-person session when the artist can sit behind you and give you the input. So what tends to happen because of that purpose, that there will be like a kind of demo mix, like a pre-mix that, that's not going to sound super nice, but they will put on the kind of reverb they want, the kind of delay they want, the kind of distortion on the guitar, just so for the mix engineer, there is a cue, like a little guidance of how they want roughly to sound the mix. Because otherwise, if someone just goes ahead and just mixes however, there will be loads of back and forth to adjust the mix. Also, what tends to be in that scenario, that artists tend to send reference tracks in similar genre, similar kind of song, and then tell the engineer like, oh, okay, so we really like how the vocals sound in this track, we really like how the guitar sound in this track, so, you know, then there is loads of reference. So that's this stems scenario. If you are mixing in your project as you go along, then you naturally will be mixing along the way, you know, maybe not so much in terms of compression, but you will already probably use an EQ, you will already probably use some reverb, some saturation, etc. So, you know, then that will be a combination of the two. And even then you can still take the stems out with your creative processing on it, and then just try to clean it up. And then in that case, if you're mixing your own stems, which already have some processing, then you probably would end up using very little amount of creative effects because you already had that. So you would be EQing and maybe adding little compression to bits that you already processed, so you're just kind of jailing the mix, so the purpose is a little different. There also, even if it's you kind of think you mixed the track, again, you can send the dry stems, you can take off all your plugins, and you can send your mixed version. Yeah, there are multiple ways, but yeah, as you produce, there will be some mixing happening for sure. Otherwise you would get stuck, you know, if the guitars or the bass doesn't sound anything like how you would want it, how can you move on, you know, if the aesthetics of the song is not actually processing. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I like your fan on the wall.
Oh shit, that's
Brilliant.
that was a gift. That's from Cyber. It's got two sides. Yeah, one which doesn't have that writing. So depending on my state, when I'm out, I turn around, you know, however I feel. If I don't want people to chat me up, then I'm just, you know, doing that.
That's brilliant. Just as it is.
It's a good present. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I think it must have been a good one because we did so much theory. We never really do theory. We always do so much practice and stuff. So hopefully this was a bit of a fresh air that we should learn some science as well. But let's see what we can get through next class. There also should be a workshop as well at some point, a 2 hours workshop, as I've been told, or an hour or something like that. So if whatever is not fit into the last class, we can maybe carry that over to the workshop.
When is the next class? That you've got to get back to us for that, or?
Well, I'm thinking, because you see, there was this project I was going to do from next Tuesday, but I actually withdrew the last time. It was very similar to this. But it was just a clusterfuck, you know, when you talk to 4 different people who work for the same organization, and all 4 of them tells you something different, and then they don't talk to each other, and then the fee got reduced, and I was just like, and then I just thought of this, that Eve runs this on her own, and everything is so organized. So I was like, yeah, it's not me who should be like, it can happen, because I can see in real life that somebody who actually cares can do that job on their own. So I pulled out. So basically I'm free next Tuesday. So we could stuck to that and then just do the extra class next Tuesday, same time, same place. Yeah, how about that? I'll tell Eve.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right, guys.
Thank you so
good.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Emma.
so much.
That was
Thanks,
amazing.
Emma.
See you
Really
next
good.
week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you
Bye,
later.
everyone.
Yeah.